Hi everyone. I want to talk about designing for user-generated content, audio content today. Basically that title, when I was approached about that talk, I was like, what can I talk about in the context of sound? Basically everything. But something, I mean, I cannot talk about everything about sound, but everything I do at Soundcloud has somewhat to do with sound. But I think like one thing that is somewhat special about SoundCloud is the user-generated content aspect. I'll go a bit into what actually is user-generated content. I'll then talk a bit about like the very early years of SoundCloud, actually before I joined, and how SoundCloud set itself up for user-generated content. And then I'll go a bit into the challenges that come with designing a product that sort of leverages user-generated content and builds for and on top of it. So, as a warm-up, please raise your hand if you have not used any of these services or products today. Exactly. So, there's these 9, there's like hundreds or thousands more that sort of have built businesses around user-generated content. And user-generated content is a term that basically came up about like 15 years ago together with another term, the Web 2.0. Web 2.0 had a bit of a branding problem. It was mainly about loud colors, it was about reflections, it was about gradients and gradients on gradients, on the surface at least, and it was about beta stickers. Lots of beta stickers. A lot of them. And those are actually from SoundCloud. In 2018. SoundCloud looked like this at that time. It was pretty young, and even though like with those like glossy kind of logos and sort of some bad reputation that came with it, the Web 2.0 brought something that was really amazing and that was sort of not necessarily visible on that glossy surface of those logos, and it's collaboration and participation. In a context where we suddenly had technology that allowed us to enable people online to participate with each other in real time, and it was just not possible before. Like all websites, all services were pretty much static content that had been uploaded to the internet and then sort of consumed by other people who went to like a certain URL. So 15 years is long ago, but if we go back even further to the time of hunters and gatherers, that's basically when humans started to create things, and at that same time also consume the creation of others. And that sort of supply chain of information was pretty much one directional. Someone would create something and someone else would come and look at it and interpret it and ideally take some learning back from that. And that pretty much like linear flow of like information from a producer to a consumer is what we still have today. There's like, for example, bookstores. You still have someone who produces books, and you have the bookstore as like the provider, and you have the consumer who buys the book. Also for other forms of information, for transportation, like cars, and groceries, and of course music. In that context, the provider that's between the producer and the consumer really just acts as part of a supply chain where they take something that the producer produces and then gives it to the consumer. I should keep the mic close to my mouth. But now we're able, or like since 10, 15 years, we're able to sort of, as providers, sort of step out of that chain and not be like between the two, but really get out and sort of rather focus on connecting the two. And that means not only allowing people to give, as producers, something to a consumer, but allow the consumer to engage and interact both with the people, but also with the content. And so that makes the consumers not only passive consumers, but participants of the thing. And then also the producers or the creators can participate back, and it creates an ecosystem that's not just a one-way supply chain. And that basically is sort of, I lost the thought. I think like looking at SoundCloud, the big challenge there was like, how do we translate that to sound? How do we make it work for sound? And one initial challenge was basically that sound is invisible. It's omnipresent, but you cannot see it. And most of our graphical user interfaces, as the word graphical user interface says, are sort of focused on a graphic representation. So we exploit ways to make the sound more of an object or like a canvas. And unless a sound is pure tone, it also does have frequency, it does have volume, and that's something that we wanted to sort of transport into how we represent sound. And that's why compared to other like representations that other services would use, which is mostly a straight line that sort of communicates the time, like the beginning and between the beginning and the end, we chose the waveform because it helped us to really not only show things like volume and frequency, but also give like every sound an identity and like a custom shape. And it's similar to what has been talked about haptics. Like if you use multiple senses to consume the same thing, like the experience just becomes stronger. Historical context. That's SoundCloud in 2007, but even in that very early stage, SoundCloud already represented sound as a waveform. And it was also important that every sound had its own URL so that people could go to a specific sound. You will never see these views, these screens again, I guess. This is how profiles on SoundCloud looked like in 2008. And even though they may not be sort of up to date anymore in terms of like how we expect things to look like, every user on SoundCloud could create their own profile, which today like is something that's really normal. But like 15 years ago or like 10 years ago, it was something special, and you had to think about like what goes where. And the most important thing there was that every user, every producer or creator, how we call them, has an identity, and they have a place where they live and where their music or any kind of sound lives. And we also had to make it easy if we wanted to be a platform that really is based on user-generated content to add content to the platform. So we allowed people to upload, but we also had a record button on the website, which allowed people to just use their microphone at home and record something. Now we don't have that anymore because like there's a lot of third-party apps that do the recording piece a lot better, and that's how most creators actually use studios, but even if they want to just quickly record like a snippet or like a thought, they tend to use third-party apps that are connected with SoundCloud. In addition to allowing people to add content to the platform, it was also a key to allow people to easily share content, not only on the platform, but sort of also outside of the platform. And then this is how the track page used to look like. So the comments are one of our sort of most important features, I think. And when we thought, it's basically comments are also one of the most important aspects of user-generated content. If you look at even e-commerce platforms like Amazon, like a lot of their businesses are based on customers' comments. And so when we looked into how do we want to make comments work for audio, we went back to like that picture of the waveform and looked at like how sound can be very different at very different times of that sound. And we wanted to enable people to not only leave general comments, but also comment on specific parts of any given track. You're still in the year 2018. This is not a time machine, and we're gonna come to more up-to-date things. But yeah, comments, when we did not have them on the iOS app for a while, and we brought them back. The noise porn, I have to read that out. Noise porn's headline was when we brought them back, SoundCloud brings back comments to mobile and all is right with the world again. On one hand, that was really nice to read, but it also, I think, shows that those comments and the ability to interact with people's creations really is an important part of the experience. So while it can be really satisfying and exciting to sort of be in that position to allow producers and like their fans to participate with each other, there's also situations where their needs and desires clash. And that creates some complexities with a platform where you have one product that tries to cater for both audience segments. So one such example is audio quality. As a creator, I put a lot of work into creating my music or whatever sounds I create. I write a song, I record the instruments, I master everything, and I spend like a lot of time on that whole process. Because of that, I care about the details, and I want my music to be listened or heard in as high quality as possible. As a listener, I have slightly different needs. I do have possibly a cell phone contract that has like limited data, or maybe I have not the perfect phone reception anyways. I might have limited storage on my phone, or I might just also want to avoid buffering time. So while for the creator, the best audio quality possible is what they would want, for the listener, the best possible, or the best necessary to not hear a difference is what they want. So that's why we always sort of experiment with like file formats and bit rates to sort of find the perfect balance between offering good audio quality, but also making sure that when you tap any track on SoundCloud, it plays right away and it plays without buffering. So one of these experiments was to replace 128 kilobytes per second MP3s with 46 kilobytes per second Opus. On a mathematical level, that sounds like we've basically split the audio quality in half. And that's also how it was perceived by a lot of the audience. That's one of the more funnier tweets that we received about that. It's crazy, I'm paying premium money on SoundCloud only for all listeners to hear my shit in 64 kilobytes. If I pay for premium, I want my listeners to get 320 and wave for free and free massages and health insurance and a monthly raffle to win a new Tesla. And there was an article on Fact magazine which basically was titled SoundCloud changes audio format and users are not happy. And most of the unhappy users were creators because, of course, when you feel like your music is not presented in a way that you want it to be presented or that you expect it to be presented, then you're not happy. But at the same time, identifying audio quality is not that easy. It's not as easy as identifying wood. And there are many aspects in terms of audio quality. Like I've already mentioned some of them. Is like some file formats are sort of associated with high audio quality, like WAV and AVE or FLAC. There's certain bit rates when it comes to actually lossy file formats. There are certain bit rates like 320 that are being talked about. There's even like ways of like how sound is presented, like stereo, 3D, mono, surround, whatever. And of course, there's like the overall perception of sound. And there's also the output. If you have a good studio audio system, then it's definitely going to sound different than the $2 headphones that you buy when you fly somewhere. So we did a survey where we asked, what does the phrase high quality audio mean to you? And surprisingly, like only a few people checked the things that were referring to file formats or bit rates. What people checked a lot more were things about if the sound is full or if like there's no noise or if it's generally a good recording. And that's basically what most listeners care about. Like you do not care about like how you actually do care about how much data goes through your phone, but like you want as little data as possible to go through your phone. And as long as the sound is good, then the sound is good. We also asked another question, which was about like buffering time. Like, what do you do when a track is buffering for a long time? And we got a lot of replies that we don't want to see and then we don't want to sort of make happen. So like refreshing, like stopping and try again later, or maybe forget about it, or close and reopen the app, or what some people also do when they close the app, try another service. And maybe another artist. So, as Fact Magazine also mentioned in the same article, a 46 kilobytes Opus file generally produces a better sound than a 64 kilobytes Opus file tends to generate better sound quality than a 128 kilobytes MP3. There are cases where like each lossy format is lacking certain details. But yeah, our goal ultimately is to really make product decisions that are about identifying all possible scenarios, needs, and the implications, and then find the best compromise between them. So there were also examples where we did not find the best compromise. One example, which is already about like 4 years ago, was when we wanted to introduce a new track page to the web app. We had already redesigned our player in the mobile apps on mobile web. We had redesigned the embed, and we wanted them, like, as you can see, like the aim was to be a little more visual, a little less techy, which is like something that we heard a lot from users at SoundCloud. First time you come there, it feels a bit like technical with the waveform and like little stats and stuff. And And so this is how, at the same time, our track page looked on SoundCloud. And I think like maybe you get a bit of like what people meant when they said like things felt a bit techy. We wanted to make it feel a little less pale, more visual, align it with those other players that you've just seen. We wanted impactful images, and we also wanted to bring like one bit of like user-generated content closer to the track page, which is the comments, because like we did have, I should have chosen a different track here. We did have timed comments on the waveform, but there was no other place to see comments, and we wanted them to be on the track page as well. So we did some iterations and we tested them with users. And what we sort of came up with was like this layout where you have like something that's a bit more immersive. You still have a big waveform. You can see the timed comments on the player, but you can also see the comments as a sort of list below the track item. And with the users that we tested with, they really liked it. They liked the feel of it. And when we released it, also like the first tweets that we saw were pretty positive. Like the new player layout on SoundCloud is pretty good. This layout is awesome. The layout is sweet. And then we had the first stabs where people were like, I'm not feeling this new SoundCloud layout. And we were like, yeah, there's always these people. Not everybody can feel what you thought, and like you cannot create a product that works for everyone. But we got more of them, and they became a bit more specific. Like, how is it that SoundCloud's layout continues to get worse? Hide the info for a track, but highlight the comments. So that was something where we're like, oh, so it seems like we've crossed a line there where we gave the comments of the participants a bit too much attention in a place that creators feel that it should be for them, and we're basically taking away the space where their description used to live. At the same time, giving like very little space to the description of a track. And I think like one comment, the most upvoted comment that we received about that design update on our blog was this one. It looks amazing how the one-to-one picture I've worked on for so long get chopped in half and expanded, so the listener gets to experience every pixel of the top half of the picture. And that also showed like one thing that we were not aware of when we shipped this, which is like, we should have been aware of it. Don't mess with the user-generated content. Like if you have people creating things and publishing them on your platform, they expect the things to be presented as they were sent, basically. One big mistake that we've done when testing that sort of layout change was we tested it with listeners and not with creators. And of course, listeners liked it. It felt more lively. It felt less techy. But basically, we created a situation where some people felt like, shit, now there's a different ratio, and I have to recreate all these artworks. So we took this feedback, and we actually invited more creators to learn more what their needs are, and we basically shipped a layout which is more like this, which has some of the more like visual kind of feel to it, but also does not put the comments on does not give comments more importance than the actual content, and also the description of the track is visible again. The artwork is actually square, and sort of the big learnings that sort of we took from that is like test with all user segments. If you do not know what all your user segments are, find out. Understand and respect standards. Like every medium has certain standards, and people are used to these standards. An album artwork is square. It has always been square, and that's how people create their artworks. And when they upload that to an audio platform, they do not, like, on one hand, they do not want to create an additional artwork, and what they really do not want is like you taking their square artwork and cutting it into pieces. And it all comes down to one really important thing, is like put people in control. Make sure that when whatever you ship, you consider what people want, and make sure that they're able to do that. Because like, if you think back of like that one track page from like 10 years ago, I think there was a lot more stuff going on, and comments were a lot more present on that waveform. But back then, like, or with that old like layout, people still had the chance to turn off comments if they wanted to. With that other layout change that I just showed, people had no control to sort of make the artwork square again. So that's basically it. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Marcus. Guys, you know the drill. Any questions? Yeah.
Have you ever considered making different types of accounts, like making creator accounts and making user accounts? Because for me, my SoundCloud page looks awful. I would never invite anybody to use it, to look at it, because I don't upload things, I don't repost things, but I use SoundCloud every day. So because I'm a user, all of the data that I'm interested is on the like right sidebar, like listening history and like all of that feed, whereas the main pane is quite empty and like dead looking for a profile like mine. So has there ever been a consideration about making like a creator account and a listener account?
Yeah. That's a really good question. It's basically a constant consideration. But at the same time, because like it would enable us to really cater for creator needs and listener needs. But at the same time, most creators on SoundCloud are also listeners on SoundCloud, and most listeners on some listeners on SoundCloud become creators, or they may become curators, and they collect music, and they want to not only show off their taste, but some people are just really happy to like curate music and share it with others. And so it becomes tricky to really figure out like where would which account start, and what is the process of changing it. At the same time, I think you're totally right. Like, we still need to think about how we can find ways to address specific needs of listeners and specific needs of creators, and make sure that a creator can do everything they want on SoundCloud, for example, without sort of messing with their identity, with their profile on SoundCloud. Like, that's one example. For example, we have reposts. So if you repost something, every repost lands on your profile, which is great for me as a I don't have great recordings. I sometimes record like sounds and then I listen to them. But it's not really good. So most of the thing on my profile is reposts, and that's nice for me. But if I'm like an artist and I actually wanna get heard, it's a bit of a problem to repost things, even if I want to share those things, because I don't want those things on my profile, because basically they.
It's not as obvious as like Twitter when you retweet something. It's
exactly.
quite obvious that it comes from a different source, whereas on SoundCloud, when something's reposted, sometimes you're like, wait, where? Like,
exactly. Yeah. And it's also like, why would I want people on my profile to listen to someone else's content rather to my content? Where on Twitter, there's a consuming one bit of content is a lot shorter time span, so I don't really risk, cannibalizing my own content.
Anyone else?
Hey, thank you for the presentation. Really good. So you mentioned when you switched the sound quality, the main people who kind of were angry about it were the creators and not the listeners. and then you mentioned that really you cannot hear the difference, which is fair enough.
Some people can though.
Yeah,
Like, I
yeah.
mean,
Some people can, some can't, and probably listeners can't. But if the creators are angry about this change, and they they stop uploading into your platform pretty much dies. So regardless whether you can hear the difference or not, it's kind of you have to give the quality what the creators want. And so after doing this switch in the quality, did you measure any drop in amount of uploads in your platform?
No, none that was no. And basically, really, I think what's also important is like we do have one metric, which is time to play, which is more of a listener metric. It basically is the time it takes from like someone tapping on a sound object or like a track, and the audio to playback. And that's one measure that's really important, because like if the time to play is too high, then listeners will just not use your platform. They will basically, maybe for that one track, maybe they will wait, maybe they will already bounce. But if they like people, they don't even rationalize it, but they recognize somehow like using a platform that has like quick audio feedback, audio playback, is more fun to use than a platform that has like, that takes a bit longer, even if it's just milliseconds. And so, no, we did not recognize anything. Also because like really the audio quality was not worse. And we basically, what happened was that we replied to press and creators, and really outlining that even though like the number looks like they're losing quality, they're on average gaining quality with that change, plus they're getting, well, we're providing a better listening experience for their fans.
Since converting between lossful file systems, I just say it this way, brings losses. That sounds so dumb. Are you saving songs in a kind of lossless way, or in a higher quality than the listener gets it? And also, did you consider to give the user the option to listen in different quality? For example, if I'm in my Wi-Fi and listen on my surround system, I'd like to have the highest quality because I don't care for how much bandwidth it takes because I have it available.
Yes. That's a bit of a tricky one, because it's also one question that we're basically talking about right now. So yes, we've talked about providing higher quality, and it's like I'm sure it's something that's gonna come, because like there are those cases that you mentioned where basically you are at home and there you do have a good stereo system, and there you actually do hear the differences, and you do not care about data. The first question, we also do store higher quality files. So basically, if as a creator I upload a track as a WAV file, that's the file that we sort of store, and that's the file that we use to create any other file, maybe like any lossy file basically. And we also offer creators the opportunity to offer their audio as a direct download in the original file. So if you upload a WAV, you can sort of share a WAV, but it's just not, a WAV is not something that you would want to listen to in a browser. So.
All right, maybe one more question.
Maybe a bit of a random question. Thank you for your presentation, by the way. I was curious because on your mobile app, you still have like the expanded image, right? And not like the little square. Are creators still annoyed about that? And how do you deal with it? And maybe they should get over themselves and like create other types of artwork for their music?
That's a good question. The interesting part is that like we had that player for quite a while already before we introduced that change to web. web was basically pretty much the last platform that we wanted to, like web browsers, that we wanted to bring that sort of visual style to. And it's not that no one complained about it in the mobile apps, but the complaints were, yeah, really sparse. Like there was not many people complaining about us having that player. People were excited about like being able to actually touch the waveform and like they felt close to the sound. And I think it's because the mobile app at that point was very much designed as an app for listeners. And so there's also this thing that even though you cannot see the artwork as a whole at any given time, you can still like basically scroll through the track, and that will make you like, that enables you to see the whole artwork. I don't really know what it is, but somehow like on the iOS app, for example, which is the first app where we introduced that, and also on the embed, we did not get a lot of complaints, but then like on web, it was outrage.
Just a short comment. I could imagine that on the web it's more pixelated and it's really cut.
Oh.
On the mobile, it's just not really cut it, because it's, yeah, you see a part, but you can still see the other parts.
That's a really good comment, actually. Yeah, our image quality for that specific execution, we had not adjusted the image quality as well, and so you could. I mean, it's not like we stretched like a 100 pixel image, but you could see like that the image was not perfectly crisp. If you created that image, you know like what the image looks like, and so that was also part. Yeah.
All right. I would say if anyone still has questions, approach Marcus just in a couple of minutes. And yeah, thanks so much again for your presentation.
Thank you.